Ryan Mace,
Present.
Lavoy Hurley,
Present.
Barbara Tillman,
Present.
Benny White,
Here.
and Bickle here. Arthur Kirshen,
Here.
Mary Preble.
She's currently having trouble logging in. I'm helping her out.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is call to the public. And I've been informed by Nico that we do have one person that would like to address the commission. Nico, if you would do whatever you have to do to make it possible for that to happen.
I've gone ahead and unmuted Lana O'Brien.
Hi, this is Lana
Ms. O'Brien, you can address the commission. You will have 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
My name is Lana O'Brien. I'm in LD9PC, and I wanted to make sure that I address the commission because I'm against making changes to the Pima County election operations for 2022. Specifically, I'm against adding voting centers in e-poll books. Voting centers cause confusion on where to go and will force voters to put their health and safety at risk standing in long lines in crowded, unsafe conditions. Voting centers disenfranchise all in-person voters, but it hurts minority and low-income voters the most. These groups often have limited transportation options and less time or flexibility to vote. There are many problems with e-poll books. They're connected to the internet, no uniform standards, and easily hackable. E-poll books have contributed to chaos in multiple states with their malfunctions, which cause excessive delays, preventing people from voting. Voting centers and e-poll books, separately or together, equal the definition of voter suppression. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. O'Brien. Nico, are there any other speakers?
Brian,
Not that I'm aware of.
Brian, I have several people that sent emails. Ed?
If you could give their information to Nico so he can let them speak if they have logged in.
No, they sent me emails that they want me to read to you.
Okay.
The first one's from Gail Schoonover on Jensen Drive. I am asking the Election Integrity Commission to not disenfranchise Pima County voters with centralized voting centers and e-poll books. Research shows consolidating polling places suppress voter turnout. This is particularly true for minority and low-income voters. E-poll books are a disaster. They're connected to the internet, easily hacked, and frequently malfunctioned. Elections in the United States were purposefully structured to be decentralized, accessible, and accountable. Pima County needs to earn back the trust of voters by ensuring our local voter precinct locations are not consolidated and there's no change to our poll books. Another one from Robert Call. I was informed that the Pima County Election Integrity Commission is proposing vote centers and e-poll books. Gabriella Casarez-Kelly, Pima County Recorder, spoke at the Tucson Sunrise Rotary Club last year, where I was a member. She spoke about voting centers as though they were this great new thing. How nice it would be to vote at the U of A football stadium 4 miles from my home, etc. The current voting by precinct is convenient and easy. When I vote in person, there are just a few people in line, parking is less than 100 feet away, and I am able to complete the process quickly. Voting centers would most likely have parking issues, lines and waiting for the ballots to be printed because there will be a different ballots for different precincts / legislative districts. I am asking the Election Integrity Commission to not disenfranchise Pima County voters with centralized voting centers and e-poll books. Research shows consolidating polling places suppresses voter turnout. This is particularly true for minority and low-income voters. E-poll books are a disaster. They're connected to the internet, easily hackable, and frequently malfunction. Elections in the United States were purposefully structured to be decentralized, accessible, and accountable. Pima County needs to earn back the trust of voters by ensuring our local precinct voting locations aren't consolidated and there's no change to our paper poll books. And the last one is from Sarah Ramsey. My name is Sarah Ramsey. I am a 20-year veteran inspector and judge at various poll locations in Arizona as well as other states. I urge the election integrity commissioners to vote no on the current election department proposal for the 2022 election. 4 months before the primary voting season starts on July 6, 2022, Pima County Elections and Recorder want to change the number of voting locations, the technology, and the rules of operating of the polling locations. They are asking the Board of Supervisors to reverse their September 2021 decision to reject a proposal to reduce the number of precincts from 249 to 205 in 2022. This proposal calls for an even larger reduction, a 57% reduction in voting precincts and locations from 232 to 100 for the entire county. In addition, the proposal is pushing to utilize federally uncertified electronic poll books, tablets with access to the county voter rolls from Apple that are connected to the internet as well as ballot printing devices. They want to turn over the security of Pima County elections to third-party vendors like Amazon Web Service, Cisco, and 10X Software Solutions. My concern is that voters will simply decide to stay home. Why? Voter confidence and election integrity is a big problem. This proposal does nothing to increase Pima County's voters' confidence in elections. Most Pima County voters are aware that Maricopa County conducted an election in 2020 with highly questionable results. They used vote centers, electronic poll books, and ballot printers. Real problems were discovered as a result of the Maricopa County audit in 2021. There are 37 election integrity bills currently in the state legislature to fix many of these problems. Among them are bills mandating statewide more precincts, less technology, higher security, better voter roll maintenance, and more scrutiny by election officials and observers. Reducing voting locations by 57% on its face is making it less convenient for people to vote on election day or to drop off their early ballots. Finding the new locations and managing the logistics for at least half of our voters will be a hassle. That is it.
Thank you, Mary. Moving on, meeting summary approval.
Before you move on, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I got notified that Supervisor Christie would like to speak to the call to the public.
Okay, if you would unmute him.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, sir. Please begin. Supervisor Christie, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to take this opportunity to sincerely thank the Elections Integrity Commission for being so flexible in agreeing to meet prior to the Board of Supervisors meeting. This is a very important and pivotal meeting agenda you have before you today that can affect the outcome of how we proceed and progress in our voting and our voting procedures. And it is important that this commission give the Board of Supervisors a clear unfiltered opinion as to the results of this meeting and the discernment of the commissioners. So again, thank you so much for being so willing to meet before the Board of Supervisors meeting. Your opinions and ideas and thoughts matter, and I look forward to hearing them prior to the Board of Supervisors meeting and utilizing them during that meeting as we progress in these areas. Again, thank you so much for being so willing to meet today. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Christie. Nico, do we have anybody else?
I don't think so.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, meeting summary approval. The meeting summary from the January meeting was distributed to all commissioners. Does anybody have any comments, questions, changes?
This is Barbara Tellman. I don't
Okay,
have any
Barbara.
changes. I just want to thank Mary for doing such a good job. We've been without summaries for so long, and I want to thank Mary for her work.
Okay. Anybody have any changes with the meeting summary as presented? Do I have a motion to approve the meeting summary as presented?
This is Ryan Mays, so moved.
Is there a second? Barbara, I think you tried to second. You broke up. Is there a second?
This
Maybe
is
one
the boy.
else.
I'll second.
Okay. Have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the meeting summary as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Meeting summary as presented stands approved. Agenda items.
Brian?
May, yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Pam in the recorder's office. The recorder is trying to access the meeting, and she did not get an invitation that is working. So, Nico, if you could please send her a panelist invitation so that she can speak.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Brian, Mary Preble is having some issues getting on as well. I don't know what's going on with her.
No, I'm on now. I can
Oh,
hear
okay,
now.
good. Okay.
I can hear now.
Okay. So the entire commission is here. That would be 8 members. We do have 1 vacancy. Okay, agenda items. Election of officers. Per the bylaws, we're supposed to elect new officers the first meeting of every year. We had a nominal quorum last month and voted to put that off until our meeting this month. We do have to elect a chair and a vice chair. And I would remind commissioners that with the revision to the bylaws last spring, the chair and the vice chair need to be of differing political parties. Is there any nomination at this time for chair for the Election Integrity Commission for 2022?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Meese?
I should have brushed up on my bylaws before this, but is there anything in the bylaws that prevents current officers from being renominated in their current positions or another position?
No.
Or does that need to? No. Thank you.
This is Barbara Tellman. I nominate Brian Bickle to be chair.
There's been a nomination of Brian Bickle to be chair. Is there a second to that nomination?
A second.
There's a second from Commissioner Atkins. If elected, I will consent to serve. Are there any other nominations for chair of the Pima County Election Integrity Commission? Are there any other nominations for chair of the Pima County Election Integrity Commission? Are there any other nominations for chair of the Pima County Election Integrity Commission? Hearing none, is there a motion that we close nominations and elect Brian Bickle as chair by acclamation?
This is Ryan May. So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Barbara Tillman, second.
I have 2 seconds or a second and a third. All in favor of closing nominations and electing Brian Bickle by acclamation signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Anyone opposed? I guess I've got this for one more year. Nominations for vice chair. And again, with the criteria that the chair and the vice chair be of different political parties, that would restrict nominations for vice chair to Lavoy Hurley, Arthur Kirshen, Mary Preble, or Benny White.
Barbara Tillman, I nominate Benny White.
I have a nomination of Benny White as vice chair. Is there a second for that nomination?
I'll second.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. White,
I decline the nomination.
the nomination for Benny White has been declined by the nominee. Is there another nomination?
I'll nominate Arthur Kirshen. It's time to get the new blood in here.
I have a nomination for Arthur Kirshen as vice chair. Is there a second to that nomination?
I don't have a video. I'll second.
Mr. Atkins, Commissioner Atkins seconded. I have a nomination and a second. Mr. Kirshen, if elected, would you agree to serve as vice chair?
Yes, I would.
The nominee has consented to serve if elected. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Are there any other nominations for vice chair of Pima County Election Integrity Commission? Are there any other nominations for vice chair of the Pima County Election Integrity Commission? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to close the nominations and elect Arthur Kirshen, vice chair of the Election Integrity Commission by acclamation. Is there a motion that is set?
So moved.
I can't get any audio.
I have a nomination. Is there a second or a motion? Is there a second?
Mr. Chair, this is Ryan Mace. Second.
I have a nomination as a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor to elect Arthur Kirshen as vice chair by acclamation signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Arthur, you are the vice chair of the Pima County Election Integrity Commission for 2022.
Right.
Could we see a picture of Arthur?
Arthur's video is on. I don't know.
Barbara's video is not on.
Oh.
Arthur was up on the screen for a minute. We have
I can see Arthur just fine. Barbara, I cannot see Barbara. Barbara does not have her video on.
I don't know that Barbara has a camera.
Oh, well.
No, my video is not working either. I don't know what the issue is, but
is there anybody that doesn't have audio?
Can you hear me, Brian?
Is that Mary?
That's me.
Yes, I can hear you.
I've taken the mute button off a couple times, but wasn't sure if anybody was hearing me. I still don't see my picture up here, so I'll unmute.
I don't see your picture or your name anywhere, but I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear Mary as well.
Okay, next item on the agenda, discussion of e-poll books and vote centers. Lavoy Hurley.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think all of you have the proposed resolution in front of you, and I'd like to, at this time, say, as I drafted this up, looked at it later, this is probably 2 resolutions, because frankly, the issue of precincts is a separate issue, in my opinion, after looking at this. So we can change that if we need to. But But the first thing I'd like to actually address is the issue of the precinct reduction. I think this is actually pretty simple and straightforward. As somebody mentioned, back in September, we addressed this issue. We discussed it. I believe sent a recommendation, if my memory serves, to the board of supervisors that we recommended maintaining the current number of precincts. And at that point, they did not do anything. So I thought this was done. I was very surprised to hear that it came back up the last meeting, which I apologize for not making.
Avoid.
But looking at the statutes, Arizona ARS 16-411 says that the Board of Supervisors of each county on or before October 1st of the preceding year by order shall establish convenient number of precincts. Now, October 1st has come and gone by a long way.
Mr. Hurley,
Yes.
can I interrupt?
Go ahead,
Reduction, vote centers will not cause a change in the number of precincts. It will cause a change. But we are going to discuss the changes in precincts later on the agenda.
Okay, my apologies. Okay. Then in that case, let's go right to the poll centers. But like I said, we may have to revise that the resolution if that's the case. Okay, so polling centers. In the short of it, I am a hard no on anything that connects our election systems to the internet. Anything. All right. That's the first item here, I think. The second item is, as somebody mentioned, one of the callers mentioned, the elections are in 1st of August. I don't know how in the world you folks think you're going to be able to put a completely new system in place in the county and have it working. I seriously, I've been around companies that have done large changeovers and stuff, and it takes months and months of planning, purchasing equipment, so on and so forth. So I don't know how in the world you think you're going to make this work by August. So that's one of the issues there. Let me get my thing up here. Then there's the issue of, as some of the callers have pointed out, there's no proof, evidence that this is going to reduce time. We know, in fact, by your own numbers, that it's actually going to cost the county money, not save the county money. And as I've said many times on these proposals, I see this is helping the county more than helping the voters. All right. Introducing confusion into the system, things like that. And currently in this legislature, there's an unprecedented number of bills in there about various election changes. Of course, they won't all get passed, but some of them will. And some of them are aimed at addressing voting centers specifically. So we run the risk of actually getting caught up in that. So again, I'll go back to my real hard issue on this, and that's anything that connects the internet to our systems. I know you're going to say that this is just the poll books. I don't care. The public hears internet, and that's all they hear. So this will, I believe, cause a backlash from the public that we really don't understand and are not prepared for. All right. And as far as AWS, I hear the stories that AWS hasn't been hacked. I did some research. It's not AWS that gets hacked. That's why you don't hear about it. It's the accounts in AWS, of which we would be one or maybe several. I don't know. So anyway, I would encourage the commission to recommend to the Board of Supervisors that we maintain the status quo and work on other things like cleaning up the voter registration database before we move to such a radical change to our election systems. Thank you.
Any other discussion or comments on the issue of e-poll books and vote centers?
Chairman,
Just Commissioner White.
I have first a question to Mary Martinson, and then I'll follow it up with a question to Commissioner Hurley, if you will.
Yes, sir.
Mary, do you know how many Arizona counties already use vote centers and e-poll books, and how long those counties have had that operation in place?
There are 11 counties that use vote centers and 14 counties that use e-poll books. I know that Yavapai County started in 2012, but unfortunately, I don't know when each county went to vote centers or e-poll books.
All right. Well, this is predominantly the model in the state for conducting elections. Is that a correct assessment of the situation?
That is correct.
Commissioner Hurley, you've made several comments that you oppose connections to the internet. What causes you to believe that the e-poll books that are proposed to be used are connected to the internet?
Because they told us so.
Who was they?
Mary Martin, the recorder. It's in the proposal. Amazon Web Services.
Well then, Mr. Wisely, is the cellular system that is proposed to be used to connect the e-poll books to each other and to a central voter registration database, are those connected to the internet, such as the World Wide Web, that we would connect when we use our cell phones?
Not literally the same as you would say the internet as a whole. It goes to it has a local connection to the devices at the vote center and connect to AWS, a section of that, a segmented section, and then down to the other vote centers. You could describe it as, as an internet connection, but it's not the whole net. I'm sorry, I'm stumbling over that answer. So it's a little depends on how you're defining your terms.
So how do I define those terms to my mother or other voters out there?
Well, you might stop telling them that it's the same as the internet that she uses on her home computer, because it's not.
I don't have to tell her that, Benny. When people see internet or Amazon Web Services, they come to their own conclusions.
Okay, let's not get into a running dialogue here. Please wait to be recognized. Commissioner White, do you have anything else?
Well, I heard a lot of in the commentary from the public that Mary read the emails. It seemed to be a coordinated campaign because the same language was used in several of those emails. But I heard a lot of information about research shows. Does anybody know what that research is? Are there any citations to it that could be referred to see how the research was done or who was involved? It seems to me that there's a lot of speculation about problems that may or may not actually exist. And it has not been the experience of the other 11 counties in this state that have used vote centers and e-poll books for a long period of time.
I can't even raise my hand to talk.
Mary, if you would like to speak, please do so.
Yes, I would like to speak about this. When we're speaking about the October deadline, that was what the public has felt was considered and perceived as a reasonable amount of time to inform the public about changes in polling centers, polling voting areas, all the changes that we're trying to make here. And we're actually trying to make 3 different changes. We know it's going to cost us more money. There wasn't even a discussion in there about upgrades to the software, how much that's going to cost the taxpayer. The $700,000 that's going to cost the taxpayer in this grant money, and we don't need it. We don't have checks and balances in the polling place. If someone comes in with their ID and it's scanned on an iPad, is the person sitting right next to them, the check and balance system, are they able to see that ID at the same time and verify that it was correct or that it didn't just get changed? And another concern is if somebody's moving into the county, they have to reside here for 29 days. If they're moving within the county, then there's no restriction on whether they can register to vote at this new place where they have this new driver's license. Let them vote. They're within the county, they're within the ARS statute. So are we going to restrict people who are new coming into the county? And how are we going to know that they just moved into Pima County for 29 days? Just a couple questions.
Okay, is there anyone else that would like to speak on the issue? Barbara, you had started to earlier. Do you still wish to speak?
Yes, this is Barbara Tillman. I have a question. It was suggested several times that use of vote centers lessens turnout, and especially the comment was especially among minority voters. I would like to know what evidence there is for this. I don't believe we can show any reduction in turnout over the years. I'd like to see what the evidence is for them saying this.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner White?
I think we're overlooking one of the major benefits to a transition to vote centers, and that is being able to announce final results for an election 10 days or 2 weeks earlier than we currently can. And the reason for that is it reduces and almost eliminates the need for provisional ballots.
No, it doesn't.
Excuse me, I have the floor. At the moment, with respect to Commissioner Preble, I believe's comments about changing of residence, you can vote now if you change residence within that 29-day period, but you have to vote a provisional ballot. That then has to be processed after the election, sometimes taking a week or 10 days to go through all of those provisional ballots to get them included in the count. In a vote center configuration, the address change happens at the vote center. That's then verified later, but that ballot gets counted. And so if we want accurate results more quickly for the public to have better confidence in the elections, I think we need to move to the vote center model as other counties in this state have in this 21st century.
Can I address that?
Go ahead, Commissioner Preble.
Okay, so you're wanting the ballot to count, even though that breaks Arizona revised statutes laws. And I can quote the law if you need that number. Is it 16-125? If you are residing in Maricopa County and you come in and you think you're going to vote at the vote center and you're saying it's going to count that ballot, then we're breaking the Arizona law. So if they're moving within the county, that's one thing. But if they're moving from out county into this county, they have to wait 29 days before their ballot. And I don't think the expediency, because this commission is called election integrity, and people do not feel that there's integrity. When we feel that only 3.5% of the provisional ballots will go away for $149,000 a year to get rid of 3.5% of the provisionals, the math just doesn't add up. Okay, I'm done.
Brian, this is Pam. May I address one of Mary's issues, please?
Go ahead, Pam.
For voters who come into a vote center and have not been registered as of the cutoff date in Pima County, which means they did not live here for the 29 days before the election, they will vote a provisional ballot as a non-registered voter, and that ballot will not count. If you've moved within the county, you're already showing as registered within the county on the cutoff date. That's why your ballot will count. Thank you.
I have a comment.
Commissioner Kirshen?
The entire cellular network is part of the internet. All of these vote centers will require a live internet connection, whether you call it internet or something else. There are IP addresses associated with each individual polling place or vote center, and And these are all things that are subject to hacking by themselves, as well as the cellular network itself. And I think that there are methods of disrupting an election that aren't necessarily hacking. Things like denial of service, sending excess pings to specific locations once you've identified the IP address for that location can block traffic. And of course, these things may not have happened on a large scale, but or even at all yet. But anything that can go wrong will. And I think that taking caution and proceeding slowly and carefully and not jumping right into vote centers this cycle is the correct course of action, in my opinion. Thank you.
This is Barbara Tellman.
Go ahead, Barbara.
I have a question regarding cost. It has been alleged that the costs will be greater. I would like to know how much of these greater costs will be the initial purchase of the new equipment and how much will be a change in annual cost.
Is there anybody on the call from either the recorder's office or the elections office that can address that issue?
In their proposal, that's where it shows the 149.
Is that for initial purchase of equipment? Do we have an estimate of annual cost in the coming years?
700,000 was initial purchase.
Thank you. And how does that compare with the cost of running polling places?
They showed in the mathematics in their budget proposal the reduction and how much it was going to cost to maintain the software, not including upgrades. And that was in the documentation.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner White?
In earlier correspondence with Mary Martinson, I asked that we be able to display information during this meeting. I would like permission to display information that I've received from David Wisely through an email that describes the Cradle Point communication system that is proposed to be used for this system and the security protocols that are used in that system.
Nico, can you allow Commissioner White to share his screen?
Should be able to now.
I have no menu options here anywhere that tells me anything about sharing screens.
Down at the bottom of your screen, you should have a mute, stop video, share.
I don't have any of that.
Up at the top left, do you see file, share, file, edit, share?
I see that.
Go ahead and click on share.
Okay. On screen 2, maybe.
Yes.
Nope.
Okay, I see your screen, but it's the
Formation landing of rocket.
label.
That's the wrong screen. How do I get back to the other screen?
If you move your mouse to the top of the screen, a drop down will come down, which you can stop, and then you can try it again.
No, that doesn't work.
One moment.
Okay, I got it back here now.
Go ahead and try one more time.
Let me try screen 1. Do you have an email display there?
Yes.
All right.
Not readable.
Yeah, I understand. Is that any better?
I can't read it. It's way too small.
All right, let me try something else here. I apologize for this, folks, but there's just a lot of different information floating around in this meeting. People making decisions based on incorrect information. And this is important. We need to understand that this system is not some haphazard proposal. It has been designed and used in many jurisdictions all over the United States. So people have thought about security of all of these things. So, Mr. Wisely, would you speak to the highlighted text that I have here?
Okay. You had asked about some advantages or security advantages for Cradlepoint over MiFi's or other devices. Speaking with the Pima County IT department, they gave me a few additional points, which were all cellular transmissions are encoded, and so they don't transmit in the blind. You can't pick them up like you could with old cordless phones on a baby monitor or something. They're all encoded, and I believe Cradle Points have more types of encoding than the MiFis we currently use for some functions. Additionally, let me jump down to that one. You can also, sorry, I'm trying to read what I said last night.
Is that where you are?
Yes. So generally, when you set up a network through an access point, all the devices are able to communicate with each other. Cradle points have an ability to restrict paths of communication so that you can have the device only able to talk to something in its line and not the ability to, so you restrict the way communications flow. Cradle Point also has a rogue detection feature, and using a network configuration manager is able to transmit that data. So every time a device connects to a network, it's identified. If an unknown device, oh, sorry, go ahead. I was going to say if an unknown device were to try to connect or to connect to a system, Cradle Points identifies it as unknown and immediately sends a message saying some foreign device has breached the first level of defense. MiFis aren't able to do this. But all cellular devices have some level of security. And common to all of them, the way cellular devices work now is the message is encoded and then packaged, and then a hash value is taken. So then when it's sent, you need an encryption key to unlock that package, and then what did I call it? Another key to decode the package, and before you do that, when you receive the package, you check its hash value to make sure that the package sent is identical to the packet received. This whole system of encryption, authentication, and integrity, the cellular community refers to as transport layer security. Encryption hides the data being transferred so third parties can't read it. Authentication ensures that the parties exchanging the information are who they claim to be. And part of this authentication is the use of MAC addresses and a secure handshake, which we can describe more later. But the next phase, the integrity, using hash values, they verify that the data has not been forged or tampered with. So cellular transmission or communication or network devices communicate in a much more secure way than we would think with old radio or old telephone lines. There is a level of encryption and security that far exceeds what we're used to, what we grew up with.
Well, I appreciate that, Mr. Wisely. I'm sorry, do you have something more you want to add?
Oh, I just realized there was one more line. Both devices also have a switch that makes them not searchable. Normally, most networks, when you go into a hotel or anything, you can find their network and log on to it as a guest. That's because they broadcast their IP address. That broadcast can be turned off in these devices so that they're basically hidden. Most devices can't find them.
Well, thank you very much. I spent a lot of my life involving electronic warfare in the military system. I am sure if the Russian GRU or the Chinese intelligence agencies or the NSA for some reason wanted to hack into Pima County's election system, they could probably do so. But the idea that this system is vulnerable to some routine non-expert hacking is just not practical in my estimation. I hear this all the time. Systems can be hacked, but I've never seen it have any effect on the elections. So with that, I'm going to cease talking, but I'd rather we deal with reality and facts rather than these assumptions and presumptions based on research that nobody knows where it comes from. Thank you.
Any other discussions from any of the commissioners? Commissioner Hurley. Commissioner Hurley.
Let Barbara go.
Commissioner
I was
Tillman.
under the impression that the reason for putting our motions ahead of time is that they would be shown on the screen. Can we have Mr. Hurley's motion shown on the screen?
It was sent out to everybody.
I
thought that Mary.
I have that motion open, or that resolution open. I will.
Yeah, everybody should have gotten a copy of that. That's what the whole point of getting it out early was.
Yeah, but I'd like to see it on the screen as we discuss.
Nico, can you give me share capabilities?
Brian, this is Recorder Augustus Kelly. There had been a question about the budget of this. Did you want to hear that?
Can we hold off that for just a minute?
Just a minute.
As I understood Mr. Hurley's comments earlier, we were only voting on the first paragraph of that draft.
Can you enlarge it?
No, that isn't. I'm not sharing the application I want to share.
See, it's not so easy.
There's 87 different ways to do this depending on whose program you're using, and I will admit I am not used to WebEx.
Can Mary Martinson share since she has all of the motions?
If he has one and she can share it, that would be great.
I will be right back.
While we're waiting on that to happen, Recorder Casares Kelly, would you go ahead and make your point?
Oh, sure. Included in the supplemental packet, I don't know if I pull up my screen. No. The total startup cost for 10X is about $1,100,000. However, we're receiving 2020 HAVA grant from the Secretary of State. We're using funds specifically for election upgrades, which would reduce that to costing us $504,796. So that comes out of our budget split between the Elections Department and the Recorder's Office. And that's something that we've already allocated within our budgets. The second year costs are about $359,880, and that does include 10X folks to be out here during our election in case there are issues that need to be troubleshooted. So what we have then figured out is the offsetting of costs, because there will be a reduction in the labor needed to process provisionals. That alone would save the county $100,000. We will go from staffing, the elections department normally staffs around over 2,000 folks for a single day, election day voting, and that number will be reduced to under 1,000, and materials and additional things such as unvoted ballots. It would really, once we calculate all of the reduction in costs and the increase in costs, all of that together, it would cost an additional $149,000 to Pima County voters, which we feel is a very reasonable investment for our community, so that people are not being that they're not having their ballots discarded, which is what we have to do. So again, that was 656 people whose ballots simply didn't count because they went to the wrong polling location. And despite being eligible otherwise, because they didn't vote in the precinct-based voting, their votes did not count.
Sorry, Kelly, I have a question.
Chairman Biffle.
I have a question for the recorder. In the information that you just presented, and I realize this is a topic of discussion later on the agenda, but assuming that the precinct changes that are being recommended by the elections department as a result of redistricting that would take us from 249 to 278 precincts in Pima County, has the cost of those additional precincts been factored into any of that, or is that something that would drive those costs up further?
No, that's even more savings actually, because those locations are decided based on proximity to voters, and so us having to hold additional polling locations, or not my office, because my office does not do this. Mary Martinson could probably speak better about this. But the elections department would not be required to have those polling locations in those additional precincts. So it would actually be less. And I think this is really important to know, because there isn't a real change for voters at the moment. They don't notice those differences. But what they're asking right now, why am I passing the library in order to drive to the church where I'm casting my ballot? So a lot of the situations that the frustrations that people feel right now, those would be eliminated because we have these more centrally located vote centers.
Can I speak, Brian?
Commissioner Preble.
Okay, so one of the places that we're suggesting to use is the Udall Center. 70,000 cars a day go through that intersection. And if you are lucky enough to get into the parking lot, all the silver sneaker peoples are playing in the gym. So I'm not sure if we want to shut down the gym that day and allow voters free egress in and out of the Udall Center, because I feel that that's a real inhibitance. And the other thing is the people who voted in the wrong polling place, when they come in and their name is not on the roster and they go to the iPad clerk and the iPad clerk says you vote down the street, why aren't they voting down the street? They're making a conscious decision to vote in the wrong place and they know their vote will not be counted. So I'm not understanding why that's the issue. If you're voting, I've done that. I've gone to the wrong polling place intentionally to vote to make a point, and my vote, I got the letter, my vote was not counted. And I know the rules, so we need to adhere to the rules.
Mr. Hurley.
On that point, I think the number I heard was 356 or something like that, voters that did not count. Is that the right number?
600 and something. But
Okay, 600. That's fine. So the procedure, as Mary said, you go into the polling place, the poll workers look at your address, you're not there, they say, no, you're supposed to vote over here. And that's the procedure, is it not, Mary Martinson? She's still there?
If you go to your polling place, if you go to a polling place and you're not on the signature roster and you check with the iPad and you are not registered in that precinct, they will tell you where you need to go vote.
Okay. Like Mary said, Mary Preble said, you've made a conscious decision. I don't have any sympathy for people that can't follow things. And we're spending $149,000 to fix something where people in their own conscious decision making have chosen to do something dumb. Okay, for lack of a better word. I guess I'm not seeing the $149,000 to fix stupid.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner White.
I have a question for the recorder. And to preface my remarks, I wound up getting a more detailed look of the proposal from 10X, and I focused in on the area of the printers. The proposal, as I understood it, involved purchasing of some Okidata printers for the ballot on demand printers. When I went to the Okidata website, they said that those printers are no longer being sold in the United States. Okidata has made a decision not to sell their equipment in the United States in the future for some reason. And I talked to Maricopa County yesterday about what they're doing. They have some Okidata printers and some Lexmark printers in their inventory, and they are transitioning to Lexmark. I looked at both the type of printers that was being proposed and the cost of them and the cost of the ink cartridges associated with that. It just seems to me that 10X, in order to present a complete proposal that would have both their devices and the ballot on demand printer, possibly didn't stay up to date on what printers were available and what printers were supportable now and would be in the future. I just wonder what the potential is of splitting those printers out from that 10X proposal and having our procurement department within the county proceed with acquiring printers and ink and those sorts of things rather than depending upon 10X to provide those.
Thank you for asking that question. We have the same concerns, and so we have an agreement in writing with 10X, and we're looking at the Lexmark printers instead. I think it's really important to know right now in particular that all shipments, all there are supply issues, there are transportation issues throughout the country, which is why we, as the Dream Team, the Elections Department and the Recorder's Office, talked about whether or not it would be cost prohibitive for us to go with, trying to find some of these materials ourselves on our own, or to go through a distributor like Tenex. So we talked about this. We weighed the pros and cons when we're talking about who the suppliers are and who they have access to. We thought it was in the best interest of Pima County to go through them because they do large scale ordering and frankly they're in contact with those suppliers of the specific needs.
Mr. Chair, this is Ryan Mace.
Commissioner Mace.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Mr. Chair. Quick question for the for Ms. Cazares Kelly. Who, if any, other election? Excuse me. But now I'm fumbling over my words. What other counties are, if any, are using Tenex as their vendor? Do we know that?
Give me 1 second. Actually, we presented on this the other day, or a couple of weeks ago to you all, and we had that within the PowerPoint that we shared for Tenex. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, no problem. And I know that we covered it a few weeks ago. Just now that we have a few more commissioners, and we're bringing the question to a head, I think it's just kind of advisable that we maybe reiterate that information.
Right, and so Tenex is one of the leaders in software throughout the country. They are serving millions of voters at this time. They're in 18 states. They're serving over 300 jurisdictions, and more than 45 million voters have used the technology. As far as in the state of Arizona, I don't know that I have that information off the top of my head, but this is a reputable organization. And one of the important things to know is Pima County is one of the second largest in the state of Arizona, just behind Maricopa. Maricopa has a homegrown program, which we looked at. We weren't comfortable moving forward with that because it requires a lot of in-house infrastructure, which they have the resources, being one of the largest jurisdictions in the I think they're the second largest jurisdiction in the country. So we needed a company that could handle our volume of voters. And currently we're at 633,000 voters in Pima County. So some of the other counties in Arizona, they're much smaller than we are. And so we needed to make sure that we were going with a company that had the ability to handle our volume of voters. And also, there were 0 outages for Tenex in the 2020 election, which many other companies had huge outages because so many people were trying to access their services at the same time, of course, through the country. And that did not happen with Tenex. So we feel confident, and that's why we proceeded to move forward with the sole source for them, and with the addition of the security features that we had discussed in our prior presentation.
Understood. Yeah, I think because I think we would be definitely interested to see or hear if any other counties were using 10X specifically in Arizona. Understood if you don't have that information available to you right at the moment. One follow-on question, just in the interest of transparency. Were any other vendors vetted through this proposal process? And if so, who?
Yeah, so we had, I'm sorry. So we had presentations from ES&S and Mary, help me out.
No ink.
No ink. And they were, was it ES&S who had the major outages last in 2020?
It was no ink.
No ink.
Yeah.
So they all had a similar product, but the reason that we were interested in moving forward with 10X in particular was because they were able to provide us with our own secure, lack of a better word, like a room for our for the cloud, as opposed to being in with every other county out there or other jurisdiction out there. And so what they were able to do was provide us with additional safety and security features within the cloud, and which is why we decided to move forward with them. So, and again, I know that there had been some concerns about connecting directly to the internet. So the situation is none of that, anything that is happening with the communication between the poll pads and the cloud, and with our internal system, which is one of the most important parts, nothing happens without permission. And so even if we were to have something hacked or downloaded, we wouldn't be able to integrate that, or we would not change that into our system without first doing a check to allow that data to come through.
Commissioner Hurley.
As I listened to this stuff about the printers, and that was a good work, Benny, about the printers, because those are the kinds of things we need to know about. I'm hearing about the fact that we don't have the equipment, right? We don't have it. So there's a procurement cycle that has to go through here. When does this stuff have to be in place to handle these elections? We got a primary coming up August 2nd.
So we're asking the pardon me.
But
so we're asking the Board of Supervisors to approve the use of the funds so that we can continue this purchase, and with the Board of Supervisors approval, that would be February. We have a written agreement in place, and actually this is our deadline. If we do not have a yes by February 15th, we cannot proceed in time for the elections, and therefore we would then have to wait until 2026 to revisit this again, because we would not try to implement these changes in a 2024 election. So it is either now or in 2026. And just in regards to, I know that there had been some concern about the discussion about like this came out of nowhere. No, this project, this joint venture started in literally the first month that I was in office in January 2021. Brad Nelson reached out to me directly wanting to move forward on this project because wanting to get ready for this election cycle. We did have the Vail School District election, which was a pilot for this, and so it has been publicly shared. We had that in August of 2021, and we have been very public about the testing of software for the eventual move towards a vote center. So this has been a year-long project, and we're getting into February, so a 14-month project that we have been working on together with the Pima County Recorder's Office, the Elections Department, and the Pima County ITD Department.
So I appreciate the work that's been done. I realize this didn't just come out of nowhere. I think Brad was talking about this a long time ago. Again, I'll go back to my concerns here about the procurement and preparation cycle. We've got an election coming up August 2nd. That system is going to have to be purchased, configured, thoroughly tested well before August 2nd. When do you think you actually have to have a full, complete, configured system in place?
David, would you like to take this one?
Basically, what we want is we want all the parts in place end of May.
So
Or
March,
actually,
March,
45 days before the election
so
is,
I'm gonna go.
sorry.
March, April, May. You think you can get the stuff, you have all the supply chain problems, procurement problems, and you still haven't really totally solved the printer issue, I don't think, from that then he brought it up, because I think that's a big issue.
Well, I'm blanking on her name, sorry.
Tenix has provided us with written agreements that say that they can supply this in time, and they are working on this. They are a major distributor, and so this is, including in what they have in stock and their guarantee to us, which again we have in writing, because we are also concerned about these things. This is also, I think, really important for you all to know that because, this is maybe even earlier than we would normally be ordering items, we have been doing the same thing to ensure that we have paper supplies. We're already putting our orders in for envelopes and for ballots, and all of those types of things are being ordered now through elections because we're concerned about it. So we're planning ahead. So we're still within this window of time where this is very much feasible. But again, if we do not, move forward in this month, in the month of February of 2022, we cannot guarantee it. And so we would then have to wait until 2026. So that is given the additional, so we have incorporated those anticipated delays and all of that. So if we move now, we're still within our allocated timeline.
So the decision by the board of supervisors coming up, that's to approve the funding, because don't they also have to approve the contract with Tenex?
Yes, so that will actually be up on the board agenda at the same in the same time. That is what they're going to be voting on next week. There's an item from procurement and from the elections department, and that's what they're voting on. And so it's basically we have everything in our shopping cart, and we just need the approval to purchase.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner White.
I've heard several times that if we don't do this now, we can't do it until 2026. Is there any kind of a legal restriction that we couldn't do this in 2022? Or is that just a policy decision that we don't want to do it in any year in which there's a federal election? I'm sorry, this is 2022. So we could implement this in 2023, for example, if we have special elections in 2023.
Recorder Casares Kelly.
Mary has her hand up.
I think that because 2024 is the presidential elections, it's best not to do anything in that presidential year. I don't know if any elections department, if they can possibly not do anything new in a presidential election year, because everyone's very stoked up elections.
That rule didn't apply in 2020.
Yeah, you're right.
What happened in 2020 that wasn't going on?
We transitioned to mail ballots in a number of states.
Well, yeah, we're not going to do it in 24. Well,
it's an internal decision. Both offices are not interested in implementing during a presidential year. That is just too much.
No, I agree with 2024 and a disruption there, but we have 2023 intervening.
So we're not for 2023. So 2021 we had one jurisdictional election, which was Vail. The city of Tucson conducts their own elections, so they don't use our equipment. There's other than if there's going to be another election again, we would only be able to test a very small jurisdiction in 2023, and we don't know who that would be. We don't know. We had we have elections cancel all the time. We were supposed to also have a May election for Sahuarita, and it was canceled. So there's no guarantee that we would necessarily have one. And then it would leave us with the same problem of having to have, a small pilot, then a larger pilot, which would have been 2022, and then the full-blown 2024. And so really to have a much larger testing ground, such as 2022 this year, this would be the opportunity to do that. Otherwise, we're having to really negotiate that and figure out, we're just going to be doing small jurisdictional test runs and not, we're going to be circling the parking lot instead of getting on the racetrack.
Can I speak, please?
Commissioner Preble.
So we had observers at the Vail school districts when they were using this equipment, these types of equipment. And one of our observers actually got on her cell phone and was able to get internet. And if she'd had the skill set, could have tampered with what was being sent over to the printer to be printed out a customized ballot if there was a customization. But she did get access to the internet. And the second point I'm making is I feel like we have a gun to our head. And I'm not liking the pressure that this is just now being put on us. And I think that it's not a prudent decision at this time. I'm done.
Any other comments? Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, this is Ryan Mace.
Commissioner Mace?
A follow-on question. I think this might be appropriate for the recorder and elections IT. And I have a second follow-on to that regarding Vail. But my first question is, has Telex, I understand why that they were selected. They have the capability to scale between mid-size and large-scale elections. I get that. So that being the case, has the vendor provided any sort of implementation guideline or scheduling guidance as to what it would look like to implement their system in a Pima County sized election system? Has there been any, because I understand the challenges of getting the board approval. I understand, the supply chain element to it, which, makes me a little shaky. But let's say all things being in a vacuum, all things being equal, you have the printers, you have the okay. What is the official guidance from 10X as to how long it would take to implement the system in a county such as Pima County if we could hit the ground running tomorrow?
I don't know that.
Oh, shit.
Mary, did you want to grab this or?
I
I
can address part of it.
Okay.
Since we have done a pilot and we've been working with them, a lot of pieces are already in place. For the software and that, it would just be fine tuning, identifying our equipment, which will be whitelisted so we can communicate from the locations. An advantage of getting the equipment from them, they can, with their team, sync it all up before they send it to us, and then we just unpackage and test it. It will already be in, I'll say, discrete packages where they can talk to the appropriate device, and then we package. I think they did send us a timeline, but I don't have it in front of me, and I don't remember exactly what it was. But a lot of the parts are already in place through our pilot and other parts. We need to then it's fine tuning. So the gross part of it is together, then we just trim the rough edges off of it. As part of the supply line issue, I know they made agreements with the vendors we'll need this amount of material if we get the green light. So they've pre-positioned some stuff, and they have, falling back to Oki Data and the printers. So when Oki Data first announced that they were stopping North America sales, they made a 4-year commitment to provide servicing and consumables over that period, so that would still be there. 10X had started to, and Oki was the leader in ballot printers. So 10X started looking at other platforms, and they were still leaning toward Oki because they hadn't finished all of their device testing. I think they're at this point comfortable with all their testing because that was a standard, that was a workhorse, and with their sudden decision, everybody started to look elsewhere, but not just commit to another device. They wanted to do a round of testing.
Sure.
The device they chose as a replacement was acceptable.
Sure. I definitely think that having that vendor provided implementation guidance would definitely be beneficial, especially to this commission, but especially to the Board of Supervisors when they make that final decision. It's one thing to say, we support the implementation of it, but it's going to take 14 months. Then that kind of, there's kind of no point in that if we're trying to make the deadline of this year. Mr. Wisely, you had talked a little bit about that pilot. Was that pilot in Vail? And if so, how did that go?
We didn't do the pilot, the recorder's office did, so you should probably talk to them about it, because it was an all by mail ballot election.
So okay.
The response that we got from our staff out there, from the poll workers, was that it was easy to use. It made it was really clean for them to follow the procedures that they needed to follow, and then in order for them to help the voters as they came through. So it was successful. It was a successful pilot. And we had 10X on the phone. We were really appreciative also of the customer service that they were able to provide us during that. We're talking about a really small, jurisdictional election where it's all mail ballot. So really it was just a replacement site. We had like 70 voters. And so just for those 70 voters, 10X walked us through every single portion from start to finish, and we were in constant communication with them. But again, that is not the scale of a 2022 election. And of course, the presidential election is a much larger election. And so we had been meeting with them up until we hit, where we're going to need to move forward on a decision from the county. And then we have stopped having meetings, and with the approval of the board next week, we can then resume those meetings literally later in the week after it's approved, we can move forward and again be in constant communication with them regarding this implementation.
Thank you.
And they run the project. And we would be happy to have them demonstrate for you.
Commissioner Hurley.
So, having been involved in a few of these things over the years, back in my working days, before we could ever go to ask for money, we had to put together a detailed implementation and rollout plan. You know, starting with the procurement process to ordering process, delivery, all this stuff had to be laid out in detail on a timeline. With checkpoints about, okay, if we get this checkpoint, we don't have it, we fall back to plan B, that kind of thing. Where is your plan for doing that? Do you have a copy that we can actually review that you can send to the Board of Supervisors? I assume you put something like that together.
Either elections or the recorder's office?
So all of this has been part of our process. So this is how we're moving forward.
I'd like to see a copy of it.
We don't have
I think the Elections Integrity Commission and the Board of Supervisors, I think we deserve to see the process that has been laid out by both the Recorder's Office and the Elections Department to understand that all the steps are comprehended and where we're going with this. And I don't see that.
So what the Elections Department has submitted through county procurement to follow all of these ordering guidelines. So they have been doing their due diligence there, and we are communicating to the public. We're communicating to the Elections Integrity Commission, and in order for us to develop that plan, to have a written plan with tenants, we have to commit to purchasing tenants.
I'm sorry, respectfully, I disagree. You put those plans together before you ever start the process. And then as you go along and things change, and modify the process and update it. But this is Project Management 101, and I don't see it here.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. I'm going to assume that based on Supervisor Christie's comments earlier and comments made that the commission or the Board of Supervisors would like a recommendation from the commission on whether to move forward with poll books or not. As a standalone issue, yay or nay, if we want to put guidance or conditions on it, that would come as a separate issue. But I would entertain a motion either in favor of or in opposition to recommending to the Board of Supervisors that we move forward or do not move forward with e-poll books and vote centers. Is there anyone willing to make such a motion?
Isn't Mr. Hurley's motion on the floor at this point?
It's not a motion, it's a resolution.
I would move
this is discussion. But
you want a motion, Brian?
I want a motion.
I would move that the commission recommend to the Board of Supervisors to not go forward with the e-poll books at this time.
I second that.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, call a vote, and an affirmative is recommending to the supervisors that they not move forward. A negative is in opposition to that action.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner White.
you made a comment about this motion being related to both poll books and vote centers. What I heard Mr. Hurley say was poll books only, no decision related to vote centers.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to amend my motion, Biddy makes a good point that I recommend.
Withdraw your motion and restate it, please.
In case I will withdraw the motion and restate it. I move that the Elections Integrity Commission communicate to the Board of Supervisors that we are not in favor of moving forward with vote centers and e-poll books.
And I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, a motion or a vote in the affirmative supports not moving forward. A vote in the negative does not support that position. Commissioner Atkins,
I vote no.
Hayes,
No.
Hurley, Commissioner Hurley,
I vote yes.
Tillman, Commissioner Tillman,
No.
Commissioner White,
No.
Commissioner Kirshen,
I vote yes.
Commissioner Preble,
Yes.
and the chair votes no. 5-3 margin, motion fails. So there will not be a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors to not move forward. Is there a motion to recommend that the Board of Supervisors does move forward? Or are we comfortable saying that the defeat of the recommendation not to move forward effectively says move forward?
Mr.
This
Chair,
is Barbara Tillman. I submitted something. Can you, Mary, can you put it on the screen?
We're working on that. We'll be right with you.
Okay, basically my motion says that we move forward with both poll books and vote centers, and I listed 7 conditions that I thought these needed to meet in order to be implemented. For example, backup systems in place in case there's failure of equipment and so forth, fully informed education, that the locations for the vote centers be submitted to the political parties and other groups as they are now for polling places, and a number of other provisions. Mary, is that ready? And I also said that the program should be reevaluated following each election cycle, so that if the changes are needed, they should be made before the next election.
Nico, could you let Dave share his screen, please? There. There.
Should be able to now.
Thank you.
And I would accept a friendly amendment to this to add one more condition regarding security, internet security, and so forth.
There is no such thing as a friendly amendment.
There isn't? Okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner White?
I have a question for Barbara. Could these be recommendations for consideration rather than requirements?
I think probably most of these are already in place, being planned. What I want to do is make sure that in future elections where we have a change of personnel in elections and recorder's office, that the same general procedures are followed.
Well, my concern about is just a clarification of whether they're requirements or recommendations. Seems to me that there's a lot of interpretation of the terminology here that would make it difficult for it to be a requirement. I think they're probably all good ideas that need to be considered, but they should be recommendations rather than requirements.
I would accept that.
Then Commissioner Tillman, would you formulate a motion that reflects that?
How about instead of the word caveat with the following recommendations? Would that satisfy you, Benny?
Yes.
Omitted change.
Yeah.
So the motion as presented would be, and if you'll scroll back, scroll
Sorry.
so I can see the top of the screen, whoever's controlling the screen. The motion is the Election Integrity Commission urges the Board of Supervisors to approve the use of vote centers for the 2022 election with the following recommendations. I would also make the comment that Commissioner White made earlier. This in no way references poll books. So
It references equipment. Number 6, actually there are two number 6s. The first number 6 provides sufficient funding, etc.
That's a recommendation.
Yeah.
What we're trying to do is be consistent across the board, and I think simplistically the thing to do is the motion needs to state that the commission is going to recommend that the Board of Supervisors approve the use of vote centers and poll books. We can always add the supplemental language as an addendum.
I would be open to making this two separate motions.
Then make the first motion.
Just deal with poll books.
No.
By limiting to poll books, we also need to have them by printers and etc. So I think it refers to the supplies necessary to perform this.
And okay, we're
So what's
all
the
right.
motion?
So your motion is that you're urging the Board of Supervisors to buy poll books and printers.
And other necessary equipment, but make it more general.
And okay, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? And the chair would like to interject something here. If we make the motion to do just poll books and printers with no reference to vote centers, assuming that the Board of Supervisors approves the use of poll books and printers, but does not use vote centers, then we are going to buy almost 3 times as many poll books and printers as we need to do vote centers. That's a point that was brought up by the recorder and the elections department in numerous presentations that I've had the opportunity to see them do. From a financial standpoint, if you don't do vote centers but you do opt to do poll books, then you're going to have to buy at least 250 poll books to accommodate the current number of precincts we got, and 280 poll books if we add however many we're going to add. So
Plus spares.
yeah, plus spares. So I would not support doing just poll books.
That's a good point.
I'm not quite sure what you are asking. Would you like a motion that says?
I would like a motion that says we're going to do vote centers and poll books. That's the recommendation to the Board of Supervisors.
Oh, I thought you wanted to separate them out.
I want to separate out the recommendations.
I'm not clear what you're asking.
Make a motion that says the Election Integrity Commission urges the Board of Supervisors to approve the use of vote centers and e-poll books for the 2022 election.
Okay. But not just poll books and other supplies.
Vote centers and poll books.
and other equipment.
The other equipment, it's kind of like saying I need a gas tank in order to have a car run. It's a foregone conclusion that you're going to have to. You can't do vote centers without e-poll books and ballot printers.
Okay, I accept whatever wording you're putting in. That's fine with me.
So on behalf of Commissioner Tellman, I move that the Election Integrity Commission urges the Board of Supervisors to approve the use of vote centers, e-poll books, and any other necessary equipment for the 2022 election. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
You can't second it, Barbara. The motion was made on your behalf.
I'll second.
Oh, you made it. Okay, whatever.
Misty, Commissioner Atkins has seconded that motion. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure I understand the numbered list is not a part of this motion.
That's correct.
But it could be a separate motion.
That's correct also. Any further discussion? Commissioner Hurley.
Yeah, just a point, kind of piggyback on something Benny said a while ago. You know, you put these requirements or conditions, whatever, but if the folks out there, the recorder, the department, the board, chooses or not chooses to do any of them, there's nothing anybody can do about it. These aren't statutory or anything like that. So it's nice, but if we think we're going to actually put hard conditions on anybody, I mean, it's kind of a pipe dream.
No, and that's not part of this motion.
Well, it's part of it. It's part of the one I'm just looking at my screen.
And we've.
So that's not what we're voting on.
No, we are voting on the nomination, on the motion the way it was stated.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay. Commissioner Atkins.
Yes.
Commissioner Mace.
Aye.
Commissioner Hurley.
No.
Can't hear you when you turn your head, Brian.
Right.
And I'm trying to, okay. Commissioner Hurley.
No.
Commissioner Tellman.
Yes.
Commissioner White.
Yes.
Commissioner Cease. Or, no, excuse me. I got a name on my list that doesn't belong there. Commissioner Kirshen. Commissioner Kirshen, I didn't hear your response. I don't know if you're.
I was muted. Sorry. No.
Okay. Commissioner Preble.
No.
And the chair votes yes. The motion passes by a 5-3 vote. The recommendation on the behalf of the Election Integrity Commission to the Board of Supervisors is that they move forward with the use of vote centers, e-poll books, and any other necessary equipment for the 2022 election. I will formulate that recommendation in some narrative and submit it to the members of the Board of Supervisors. Next item on the agenda is discussing.
Wait, I want to make another motion for the recommendations.
That's the next item on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
The next item on the agenda is to ask the Pima County Board of Supervisors to set policy on vote centers if the supervisors vote yes on vote centers. So, Barbara, what would you like them to do?
Okay, the EIC urges the Board of Supervisors to, to approve the use of the following recommendations when vote centers are implemented. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we could probably clean it up a little bit, but, and those are items 1 through 6.
Yes, except there's 2 6s, it should be a 7.
Items 1 through 7.
Yeah. And Another change that I made that didn't occur on this is following each election cycle, not each election. In number 7.
First, number 7. Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
Commissioner Mays, I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the recommendations that the commission is making to the Board of Supervisors? See a lot of people turning blue, but that's background noise, I think. Okay, hearing no further discussion, the motion on the floor is the EIC urges the Board of Supervisors to implement the following recommendations supporting the use of e-poll books and vote centers. Backup systems should be in place in case of equipment, Wi-Fi, or electrical failure. Installers, troubleshooters, and poll workers should be thoroughly trained to deal with procedures and equipment. The public should be fully informed of the changes, with emphasis on changes of familiar precinct voting locations. The proposed locations should be submitted to the political parties and other concerned community groups, including representations of disabled and minority populations, for review. Vote centers as well as ballot drop-off locations should be located at places convenient to a variety of people, with emphasis on those with limited transportation options, preferably combining no more than 3 adjacent precincts in the urban areas and located at accessible locations in rural areas. Locations should be coordinated with early voting locations to increase convenience of voting. The Board of Supervisors should provide sufficient funding to assure that an adequate number of voting locations is made available. The program should be evaluated following each election cycle and changes made as needed. Commissioner Atkins.
Yes.
Commissioner Mace.
Aye.
Commissioner Hurley. Commissioner Hurley.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you, Brian.
Yeah.
No.
Commissioner Tillman. Commissioner Tillman.
Yes.
Commissioner White.
Yes.
Commissioner Kirshen.
Yes.
Commissioner Preble.
No.
And the chair votes in the affirmative. So by a 6-2 vote, those recommendations will accompany the request that the Board of Supervisors move forward with the implementation of vote centers and e-poll books. Next item on the agenda is an update on personnel replacement for Pima County elections in the Pima County Recorder's Office. Barbara. Commissioner Tillman.
I was just asking for an update on where we are in hiring the 3 positions for elections, and I believe 1 in the recorder, and any others that may be open.
Mary and Recorder Casares Kelly, would you like to address those issues?
We've got an election tech position, our front desk receptionist job open, and the trainer that we will be doing interviews for, I think, next week. And we still have the election unit supervisor. That was my old job, and Ann Lily's job that we need to fill.
Have we replaced Brad Nelson?
No, not yet. They are still looking for more people to interview.
And Recorder Casares Kelly,
The issue regarding staffing?
please.
Okay, so we are in the middle of interviews for an IT manager. We are hiring for more recording staff and voter staff. We had two senior level managers retire in December, and so that caused a movement up in voter staff to then fill that. So we have Michelle Almeida, who is now one of our managers, who had been the lead on the problem ballot team at the at the ballot processing center. And it is causing a ripple effect, so we are filling those vacancies. We are looking for an admin assistant to assist admin. And we recently filled a public records technician post, which is somebody who will directly interface with the public regarding public records requests on the recording side, not on the voting side, but what their job is to help them search for documents that they need, historical documents, and it's somebody who's specialized in that. And so those are our major. We also have an opening for IT. I think that's it. So.
Okay.
Are you
Anybody
getting
have any
enough
other
applications to have feeling that you'll have adequate personnel?
Yes. So we actually, when we pulled the list for what we call the OSL position, which is the recording technicians and the voter staff, which is our entry level positions, we had over 97 vacancies, and so people apply within that category that fit that description. We have a really intense need for Spanish language speakers, and so right now we are going to be interviewing, I think, somewhere like 30 applicants to fill, I think, 6 positions. And so we have quite a number of applicants for almost all of these positions. And then we're going to be opening up the Pasquayaki Outreach Coordinator position. So we have a Thanawatham Outreach Coordinator whose primary focus has been the Thanawatham Nation and has been doing tribal outreach for the Pasquayaki also. But we are going to have a dedicated person for the Pasquayaki tribe. And then those people are also doing outreach all over the county upon request. And as people come in and request voter registration forms, we offer them trainings. So there's a lot of applicants that have been applying. We've been running into a little bit of problems because the county HR is a little behind. They've had some vacancies, and so it's taking us a little while longer, but just in this past week, we've been scheduling so many interviews, and so we hope to have those vacancies filled. And then we had also requested additional PCN numbers, so additional positions that we can, what we're really focused on, what we want to do, the election side of our house gets a lot more attention than the recording side. But what happens is we pull the recording staff to help us with elections during elections because we need all hands on deck. And so what we're trying to do is get it to a point where we are allowing the recording staff to be untouched during that time because those everyday transactions that lead to people's, people being given the keys to their home and different things like that, those transactions still need to occur whether or not we're in the middle of an election. So we're trying to build up our staff in order to not have to rely so heavily on that part of the house. So that's where we're at.
I'm more concerned about the top level positions in both departments.
So we have filled almost all of the top level positions, except for the IT manager position. So the IT manager, and again, we're in the middle of interviews, and that has been taking us some time, but we feel like we have some good opportunity in this most recent round. As far as we have filled the communications position, which is an admin. The assistant chief deputy is coming from Marana and has elections experience. That has been filled. The voter manager position, again, we did an internal promotion, and so we just recently opened another. It's a slightly lower manager, but we do have candidates in-house who, once that is open and that position is available, we expect for some of our staff to then apply for that, and that would fill all of those higher level positions, and so we would be then more focused on the lower level. We also had internal promotion, 2, 3, we've had like 4. And so we do have interim appointees for those, not appointees, details in those positions that are critical to our success. But really, we have worked really hard to fill all of the top level positions, and now we're working on some of those lower. And again, we're in the middle of those IT manager interviews at this point. That's where we're at.
Thank you. Mary, how are you doing with filling those major positions?
Well, I know that they are continuing to search for a director. We've already done 3 interviews. They want to do a few more before they make a decision. Ann Lily's job and my old job is problematic because of the way the specs for the job are written. So I am working with the county administrator to see what we can do to get people in, because currently there's only one person who's qualified for the election supervisor, and she doesn't want the job. So I am working with Ms. Lesher to see what we can do about getting someone in so that I can train them before I leave in April.
Thank you.
Anybody else have questions for elections or the county recorder?
I'd like to ask a question.
Go ahead, Commissioner Preble.
We are training people twice a week. We're training groups of 20 people to work at the polling places, and they're submitting their applications online, plus the party will be submitting a list of names of people who have stepped forward and said they want to work at polling places. I'm hearing rumors that they don't need these people, and that's never been the situation in the past. They've always turned to the party and said, do you have people that can staff these positions? So I'm just trying to wonder what the status of that is.
We have sent out a mailer asking our veteran poll workers if they are available. We have often asked the parties for help with lists and usually don't get anything. We will take whoever you have that's wanting to be a poll worker, we will train them, and if we need them, we will use them.
In the recorder's office, we are currently reviewing our list of poll work or all election staff, and once we have determined who can return from we're following the same suit of our veteran election staff, intermittent staff, many who return year after year after year. We will be determining who is able to come back, and Then when we have a good count of how many people we need, applications, and then we're not requesting lists of people. We're actually going all through county HR, where they will have to then submit their application and be vetted just like anybody else who applies for those positions.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner White?
I do have a comment here, and I don't know whether either Mary or Gabriela would like to respond, but in my discussion with Ray Valenzuela yesterday at Maricopa County, talking about voter center implementation, he made a comment that I found very interesting, that during the early voting phase, which they start by law 29 days prior to the election and continuing on up through election day, they use the early voting sites as vote center locations so that they're not moving them around, and the voters really appreciate that because they don't get confused about where they need to go to vote. But the staffing of that, I asked a question about whether they used county personnel for that or if they had part-time volunteers, and the response was that they use volunteers, they train them, they bring them on, and they actually are there full-time for the 29 days or whatever period of the early voting is necessary. And then some of them even continue on through election day, so that you have volunteers getting paid daily for the entire period rather than switching out between early vote center being recorder people and election day being election staff. So that was a question I raised early on in this vote center communication that I had with initially Brad and then Mary and David about who was going to be staffing the early vote center, and hopefully the elections department and the recorder's office can come to an agreement there as to who those people are. We won't be shifting people out between early voting centers and election day where the site is the same site.
May I respond?
Oh, sure.
Benny, our hope is that every person that works at an early voting site will be working at a polling place somewhere in the county, so that someone who knows how to use the system, even though everyone will be trained, they will know how to use it because they've used it for 29 days. So that's my hope for election day, that at least one person from each early voting site would be at as many polling places as possible.
Any other comments or questions?
Just in addition to that, the decision to make those completely separate processes was at the discretion of the previous recorder and the previous elections department director. And so we have been in communication, me with the current, with Mary Martinson. And so we absolutely will be having those conversations, but there is no concern there. But in addition, I just want to let you all know I have to jump off. I have a call with the governor's office, and thank you. Just want to thank you all for your vote today, and forward to seeing you again soon.
Any other comments or questions regarding staffing at either the elections or the recorder's office? Okay, next item on the agenda, precinct line adjustments and creation of new precinct lines. It says Pima County Board of Supervisors. I would assume that's the elections department, as this information was presented and is there for action.
Mr. Chairman.
The Board of Supervisors.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Kirshen.
I emailed out something related to a previous agenda item that I'm not sure if everybody got it, but we kind of skipped it over. I'm not sure, because it was sent out so late. Is that something that can't be discussed at this meeting at all?
It's not an agenda item, so it can't be discussed at the meeting.
Okay, I thought it was related to recommendations on adoption of e-poll books and vote centers. And so it would be part of a previous agenda item. But I submitted it. Does that mean it will appear on next month's agenda, even though the Pima County may have already voted to adopt vote centers?
It certainly can, yes.
All right. Well, I sent it out to last night, and so I guess it will have to be an agenda item next meeting.
Yeah, and part of the requirement there is information needs to be publicly available, needs to be available to the public at least 48 hours prior to the meeting.
Okay, and it wasn't 48 hours for sure.
Okay, thank you.
This is Barbara
Alexis,
Tellman.
Barbara?
I have a motion. I have a motion regarding the re-precincting. Is this appropriate at this time?
Can we hear from, well, go ahead and make a motion.
I move that re-precincting be limited to changing only those precincts that are split because of the statewide redistricting, and that the other precinct reduction be eliminated at this point.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Last year, when re-precincting was submitted, both parties had strong objection to the massive change in the number of precincts. And I think that we have to make some changes now. There are precincts such as 16 that were divided between Pinal County and Pima County. Clearly changes have to be made, but I don't think we need the massive change, especially if we're going to vote centers. We don't have to worry about finding polling places, which is the main reason they like to reduce the number of precincts. Precincts are important to party organization.
If I read the documentation that was provided, we are not talking about reducing precincts. We're talking about going from 249 to 278. Is that a fair assessment, Mary?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Elections Department, is that a correct statement?
That is correct. Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood.
Okay.
I thought you said 178.
Oh, no.
Commissioner Hurley.
Yeah,
I withdraw my motion.
somewhere I thought there was a number of 100 thrown out there. So I would echo Barbara's concerns. We should be doing this for redistricting, having been involved with it myself a little bit. It's absolutely true. Any other changes to the precinct numbers, well, that's a hard no. Besides that, we're already past the October 1st deadline for doing that.
Yes, I have withdrawn my motion.
Why? That was a good motion.
Misunderstanding.
Mary, would you explain the rationale behind the re-precincting information that you provided? And it's my understanding in reading the documentation provided to the Board of Supervisors that all of these changes were made to accommodate statute as far as redistricting is concerned. Is that correct?
That is correct. When the Independent Redistricting Commission created the new congressional and legislative district lines, we had to go through our precinct lines and accommodate those lines, but we also have to accommodate the current Board of Supervisor lines and Justice Precinct lines. So I've got a few examples that I'd like to show you, and I think it will make things more clear. So we're going to share a copy of a map. Okay, this is precinct 21. And 21 used to go along here, up and around. This is the legislative district line here. This is a Board of Supervisor line. So precinct 21 is going to lose this chunk of its old precinct, and this precinct is now precinct 251 because we can't have precinct lines that cross legislative, congressional, supervisor, or JP. So does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
Okay, I have another one that I'd like to show you.
Just a minute, Mary. Commissioner Hurley, you have a question.
Oh,
So is this where the term I heard of micro precincts and that kind of thing comes in?
that's exactly what it is. It's
Okay.
like all these lines form little islands of land that has to become a precinct on itself.
Okay.
So next one.
See the next name.
Okay, this is precinct
Let
30.
me open one more.
Oh, okay.
We're there.
Mary, while David is looking for that, based on the previous map that you had up, when the Board of Supervisors does their redistricting, I believe they're required to have it done sometime in July. Would there be an attempt on their part to move the supervisor PCC governing board line to
Yes.
where the legislative district line is to eliminate some of these micro precincts?
So this precinct 255 right here, that I'm hoping that the supervisor redistricting commission will move this line for the supervisors down and follow the congressional. We won't eliminate 255 this year, but we will be able to eliminate it in 23 so that we don't have this little triangle as a precinct. This one was legislative here, congressional, and supervisor. So if the supervisor line follows this, we may be able to put this portion into this precinct 14. It's all up to the redistricting commission for the supervisors and then what the board decides next year. But we will attempt to get rid of the teeny tiny ones if we can. So is there any questions about why we have created 29 new precincts and
Are there any of these new precincts that are kind of like precinct 27 that have no registered voters in them?
I don't know if there are any registered voters in these because we haven't seen those figures yet. All I know is we had to create them because of the lines. I'm assuming 255 right there won't have any voters in them.
Okay.
But 74.
And all of the changes on this proposed list were done because of redistricting. Is that correct?
That is correct. We made all these changes to follow the law.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner White?
Mary, I have not been privy to the information that was provided to the supervisors, but in a conversation I had with Administrator Lesher yesterday, I got the impression from her that she thought that these precincts had been dictated by the Independent Redistricting Commission rather than a response by the Elections Department to the legislative district and congressional district boundaries. I don't know when the IRC became involved in precincts. To me, their agenda is limited to congressional districts and legislative districts.
And that's true. They do decide where those lines go. But as you can see here, this is a congressional district. And it has cut off this portion of a precinct.
Oh, right.
That portion can't be included in any other precinct. We have to create that precinct because of the congressional district line and the supervisor line. So they may not have meant to do that, but the way their lines are drawn, that's what happened.
And it can't become a part of that precinct that's down to the lower right?
No, because this is a supervisor line right here.
I'm sorry, I don't know what you're pointing to.
Oh, I'm sorry. When they drew the congressional district, they cut off a piece of a precinct that is also surrounded by a supervisor line.
Oh, that blue line is a supervisor line?
Correct, correct.
Okay, okay. All right. It just seemed to me that Ms. Lesher was saying that somehow the IRC came down with a listing of precincts, and for some reason we had changed our maps, but it's actually the reverse of that.
Right. They made the lines. We have to clean up the mess.
Okay, I got it. Yeah, they're they're restricted to these census blocks, which don't align with anything.
Right, right.
Okay, any other questions of the elections department on why we did what we did? Hearing none. Other than Commissioner Kirshen's request to put his presentation on next month's agenda, are there any other future agenda items that anybody would like to suggest at this time?
I'm sorry.
I would
Commissioner
like to be
Hurley.
kept abreast of personnel changes in both departments.
Okay. Commissioner Hurley?
I would like to put the discussion of going back to live meetings on the agenda.
Okay. I'd like to see that happen too. Anything else at this time?
I would also like to see a summary of what election laws have been passed. And if the legislature is done by that time, then I'd like to see the election laws summary of what has changed. If not, then the next election agenda.
And I understand what you're saying, Commissioner Tillman. I'd like to find somebody that's willing to do that. And I think I may have a solution to that problem, but we'll get something on the agenda one way or the other.
Perhaps the county lobbyist?
Could be yes.
Yeah, let's put it on the agenda. That way we can discuss it. At least
Yeah.
pass it up.
We'll put it on the agenda. How much meat we put on those bones remains to be seen. Anything else? Is there anybody that feels compelled to have another meeting next Friday, which was our regularly scheduled meeting for the month of February? Hearing none, then this will be our February meeting, and we will not meet on Friday, February 18th. Our next meeting will be Friday, March 18th. I will endeavor to get our presentation with recommendations to the Board of Supervisors in a written format and to Mary so she can send it out to all of the commissioners, hopefully later today, and get that back and get it into the clerk of the board's hands so that it can be distributed to the members of the Board of Supervisors. Is there anything else that anybody wants to bring before this commission today?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any objections? Hearing none, this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
About so many things than we ever did at the beginning, but I guess that's the way those things.